What do you think about the LSU game? Did you watch it? The LSU game?
The LSU JV game?
Liam was at it. I sent Liam for his 15th birthday with Joseph.
They sent out the JV. It was awesome that they forgot to send their varsity. It was a varsity game. LSU forgot to tell them that.
That's the real. We showed up at church Sunday, and there's a guy. He's probably how old? How do you think Art is?
Oh, he's the best. He's probably, I don't know. He's in his 60s.
Late 60s.
Upper 60s.
He rolls in, and he's got number 4, full on Alabama. Jennifer can't even look at him.
He was waiting for you. He leads our prayer team.
Yeah, and he wore the jersey down at the front to pray for people.
Yeah, Dylan went. He stayed to the very end.
He did.
Yeah, on
Liam
and off
left.
rain. He said him and like 6 other people stayed to the end.
Liam texted us that he was like, "Yeah, I rolled," and I'm like, "There's a $500 ticket."
Yeah.
Just rolled.
Yeah, of course.
You sure you want to roll now?
Just rolled out.
Yeah, we're going to get Canes.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
That's awesome.
Hey, I got this statement. I've been thinking about this probably the last month or so. And I just want you to respond to it. Here we go. It says, you probably heard this, but most people overestimate what they can do in a day and they underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. Francis Schultz said that. How does that hit with you? Thinking about leadership, you've been in leadership for, how many years you been in ministry and in leadership?
40.
40 years. Right. Leading for the long haul.
39, 40.
How does that statement hit?
Well, I mean, I think that statement nails it. But, I think we see everything as a short par 3. And most great things are a long par 5.
Yeah.
And we get frustrated and, and you can make a shot in the woods on a par 5 and still par the hole. So you can, you get frustrated on a bad shot. And then you're like, oh, okay, it's but it's like, no, you can recover, you can play it safe, get it back in the fairway, and still land the green and putt for par or putt for a bogey. Yeah, and I think you so often you see everything as a short par 3, and you gotta get it on there. I got to hole in one it, and it's like marriage, raising kids, friendships like we've had. Yeah, that's a long par 5. It's like,
it's great.
It's long. It's about 700 yards, 800 yards. I mean, it's way out there. Yeah. To be able to do something.
Yeah. Like when I think about, I've been able to watch your leadership for, almost 30 years now, which is crazy. And, to see your faithfulness over the years, ups, downs, mountains, valleys, the whole thing, but still.
Zigs and zags.
But the steadfastness to keep going, to keep plowing forward, has really inspired me as somebody that you've really invested in for a long time. Had a huge influence on my life. But what I've always kind of thought about is like for someone to have that type of longevity in ministry and leadership, it doesn't matter if you're leading at a church, leading at a business, whatever. Right. There has to be some moment early on where you have this real defining moment that puts the fire in your bones for the thing that you feel called to do, you feel assigned by God to do, that conviction to come hell or high water, I'm going to stay in this. It's kind of like the Nehemiah thing where, he gets this burning conviction to rebuild the wall. And what does he keep saying? Under attack, under, resistance,
ridicule.
I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Talk about that moment for you where you felt called, like clearly like this is a conviction and I have to do this. It's a burning in my bones.
Well, I mean, it's a race. As Paul said, it is a race. So you're wanting to make sure when you start the race, you're starting it for the right reason and with the right call. So you gotta make sure you start the right race right. Yeah. This is God. I want to do it to give him glory, to bring him glory, and then to serve humanity for the fingerprints of God. Yeah. And you quickly realize it ain't about you. And none of it will make sense if you do make it about you. Yeah. Ministry, marriage, nothing really makes sense when you become the sun, the moon, the stars, and you're everything. Yeah. It never makes sense. So you got to start the race out well as it relates to, okay, I feel called. I feel like I'm supposed to give my life to this. I feel like I'm supposed to run this race. And it's like the Daytona 500. You're going to have some pit stops where you're going to need to recalibrate, change the tires, check the fuel. I mean, there could be something broken. You could have bumped into something, and you're going to need to, do some real work. So I think, throughout life, you continue to have those moments you talked about, Jason. You have a moment where you're like, okay, do I need to keep doing this? Am I still adding value? Is there still a place for me in the game?
Yeah.
Or do I need to come out of the pit differently about something different? And I think you do come out of the pit a little different, whether that's through pain or through the need to change, whether that's through your own failure, a sin, a discovery about something.
Yeah.
I mean, because you know more about you than you did. We all know more about each other now in our own life. So a little bit of start off right, and then you're going to have to make pit stops.
Yeah.
And then say, okay, Lord, what now? What next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of that for me and Dylan in our life as it relates to ministry. I would have never thought I would be doing now what I'm doing now as it relates to serving at a great church, helping to lead ARC, and then being a champion for pastors, helping people through pain. Yeah, I didn't think of that about that beginning. But at the beginning, though, I did have a moment where I felt like God called me and said, and I think it was a kind of I don't know what, you don't remember those nights, but it was, I want you to serve broken humanity. I do remember that.
How often do you go back to that? How often do you go back to that?
Probably more than you would think.
Yeah.
Because you get pulled and you get distracted and you get sidetracked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to go back and reset and say, okay, Lord, make sure I don't lose my heart. And the original thing you put your finger on, broken humanity. I was at Walmart yesterday. I walked out of Walmart's, as Brother Wayne calls it, Walmart's. The Walmart's. There's several of them there. It's Walmart's. And I was going to the car and I saw a guy sitting there, and you could tell he was hurting.
Yeah.
And I got all the way to the truck, and the Lord quickened my heart. Said, again, I wish I did this way more. I miss it 9 times out of 10. But I needed to go somewhere, and it was like, go bring that guy some money to get lunch.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And on the walk back, you know it, Jason. You do it well. You walking back to be obedient.
Yeah.
And then the walk back, it was like the Lord reminded me, this is really my scoreboard.
Yeah. That's great.
I know you got one. Other people have one. Other people think they know you. This is my scoreboard, is your obedience to broken humanity.
Yeah.
So I went back over there, asked him his names. I tried to spend a moment with him instead of just a drive-by, handout. I don't like that. I feel like the older I get, the more. So what's your name? And I put my hand on his knee and just said, man, I love you. I'm praying for you today. Wow. God, I try to say, like we would all do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to make much of me. I'm saying that to going back to the call of trying to be obedient and get those checks. And that, kind of where am I? Like it's like when you push the little arrow, recentering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I'm curious to follow up on that. You talk about if ministries, the Daytona 500, you've got these pit stop moments.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people who started off with the right intentions, as you talked about, the right motivation, wasn't about them. The call was clear. There's the fire in their bones. And then somewhere along the way, maybe it's a pit stop moment or maybe it's somewhere out on the racetrack, but they just feel like they've lost it. They're not sure, is it still that? Do I go back to that? So I'd just be curious to you, I'm sure that you've had those moments in life. What would you say to someone who maybe they are confused on the call? It seems more distant than it is now. What would you say to that person? How do they find it and get it back?
I'm thinking of Days of Thunder. Put them in the wall.
What a great movie.
It's a great one. Put them in the wall. So sometimes you get put in the wall. Sometimes you get ran off the track.
Yeah.
We could go all day long as preachers, spin out, all these things that happen in your life. Those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And I was with a guy from our college, Highlands College. One of our theologians was there, and we were at a conversation, and we were talking about, following God and trying to be fruitful. It's really not this. He said it's in the zigs and the zags that you find God.
Yeah.
And God is in all this. But, hopefully you end up, at another place, but you're finding God in the suffering, in the success, in the win, in the loss. What you're trying not to do is quit.
Yeah.
You're just trying not to quit.
What is that phrase? I think Chad Veach used to always say, if you don't quit, you win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't quit, you win.
And I think that it is that, and what community are you in? What type of self-talk are you doing? Is there other things that you're becoming dependent upon? Whether you become dependent upon, some people become dependent on pain. Some people become dependent on praise. You can get dependent on a lot of things, and all of a sudden you look up and, man, that does not fill the tank.
Yeah.
And so you got to check what you're dependent upon. I think we've all been through moments like that where you have to wonder, why am I doing this truly?
Yeah.
And those are always pit stop moments that you realize that.
Yeah.
We talked about that a lot. Me and Jason have talked a lot about that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear you unpack that. You said people can be dependent upon pain. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think you can become dependent on your identity that is, I'm hurt.
Yeah, almost like victimization.
Yeah. There you go. That's the better word.
Yeah.
Y'all are a better wordsmith than me.
I don't know
Of course,
about
Nathan
that.
is. He's a genius.
Nathan's the smartest word at the table.
Yes, he is. And so Jason and I realized that, Nathan. But yeah, I think that's it. You become, your identity now is a victim.
Yeah.
Your identity is, and I don't think, I'm not minimizing anybody's pain or what anybody's been through. Never. But you just don't want your identity to land there.
Yeah.
You want to get into that book of Ephesians where all of a sudden then it's like, I am in Christ.
Yeah.
So you're always trying to move to that identity. And I've seen people, get addicted to their suffering or get addicted to, maybe someone did something to them.
Yeah.
And now I'm living out that of what someone did to me.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get past that as much as you can. Takes counseling, takes community, takes time.
Yeah.
It takes support. It takes honesty. And all those things, staying with the pit stop, you want to be able to get to the pit stop and, get that.
I think the goal of a pit stop is to eventually get out of it, right?
Yeah, not to stay in
not
it.
to get stuck
I think it's funny that you got a guy in the pit stop. I'm going 300 miles an hour. And he's washing the windshield.
Yeah.
Okay, we're wiping the windshield.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a reason why you need some good vision.
You need some clarity.
You need some clarity that because some of us are running at 260 miles an hour, and you're doing this. It's Groundhog Day.
Oh yeah, you can get lost in it.
Yeah.
But you said you used the language. How did you say it? Well, you just used the language of scorecard.
Yeah.
You said that a few minutes ago. Scorecard. A lot of leaders, you and I, all three of us, we travel a lot. You're around pastors, business leaders, people that are day in, day out in the grind of leadership. And oftentimes you find guys and gals that they're so discouraged because they're looking at their scorecard and they're looking at other churches and it looks like they're winning and they're like, I'm not winning. They look at the other businesses that are up and to the right and they're like, I'm not winning. And that scorecard, the way that they've defined success, can make them up, make them down. Speak to that a little bit.
It's big. It's massive.
Yeah.
I remember when I stepped down from Healing Place and I moved to Birmingham. And the second or third year I was at Easter, and Pastor Chris preached a great message. A lot of people gave their life to Christ. It was a really great weekend. It's all good.
Is that Mark? Is that Mark?
Who was that? And I remember I left and I felt empty. And it wasn't because it wasn't a great sermon. My family was with me.
Right.
I mean, Dylan and the kids, you go. I think she cooked a meal. Everybody looked great. We were decked out, man, had our pastels working. And I felt empty. And I felt really sad. And I couldn't shake it. Well, in previous days, I would have internalized that. But I knew that it didn't make me feel right. So I talked to my counselor. And he said, you haven't changed your scorecard. He said, You used to walk out of Easter, you had preached, people have given their life to Christ. You were the orchestrate, what do you call it? The conductor.
Yeah.
You were a little bit of the conductor. He said, now you're just in the band.
Wow.
And you're just in a seat playing it. Because I went and shook hands in the foyer. I was supportive of the sermon. I felt like I had worked that week to get people to church, hopefully. And he said, you've got to change your scoreboard.
Wow.
And attach your feelings, your identity, and your emotions to it. And I'm telling you, it clicked in that one phrase. I said, I'm changing my scoreboard.
Wow.
So then I walk out of Easter the next year. I've never felt better. I supported. Man, I was a part. I was on the team. I was in the game in a different way. So I believe that's what you have to. And so to be able to attach your emotions, feelings, and identity to a new scorecard.
Yeah.
And again, that was for me kind of output a little bit what I was doing.
Right.
But I think what you're saying too, Jason, is so true about your own identity as it relates to other people.
Yeah.
So I think that lesson for me has taught me to look at the whole scoreboard of my life. And I think there's some days I'm putting points, and then there's some days I'm trying to shoot in a basket that's not mine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like you rack up all these points in somebody else's basket.
No,
that ain't good.
You're not winning.
You're not helping yourself.
No, and you're going to stand before God. He's going to say, "Well, you didn't do what."
You're shooting the wrong shot.
Yeah,
It's not your shot, buddy.
Yeah, you didn't do what I called you to do. You did what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
So you got to readjust. But I think that's a good conversation piece.
Well, we were talking. Remember this? We were talking the other day about John the Baptist. If you read like Josephus, the Jewish historian, he said that John the Baptist had this ministry that just went boom and exploded. He's in the wilderness. Thousands of people are coming. But it was only a 3-year run. His ministry only lasted for 3 years.
Wow.
And there was a moment where it shifted when Jesus steps on the scene, and Josephus said it was a steady and steep decline of numbers to the point. Remember when his disciples go, John, well, I mean, everyone's leaving the river where we're at and going over. Everybody's leaving our church and going to the new church. Everybody, and his response to them is like, "Man, I'm good."
Yeah,
he was like, "I'm not the groom.
Our clicks are going down."
He's like, "I'm not. Yeah, people are leaving. We're not baptizing more people. You know what?" And he's like, "I'm good. I know who I am, and I know who I'm not, and I'm just the best man." And then he says this statement. He says, "A person can only receive what heaven gives them," which is great. And then he says, I must decrease, he must increase. But he talks about, he says a statement, he says, and my joy is complete. And what I've found, and we talked about this, is when your scoreboard is wrong, you don't know who you are, what you're called to do, and you're watching someone else's river, you're watching someone else's assignment, comparing, then one of the fastest things that you lose is your joy.
Yeah.
It just affects you emotionally, And so I think as I've talked to a lot of leaders, and we do it a lot with Sidecar, it's like we go in, and I think one of the things we try to help them with is, let's find out what is the scorecard.
That's so good, Jason.
And so that on the days when you feel like you're losing, if you go back to the scorecard, that it's about the one, it's about the individual, it's about
the hurting person.
Yeah, it's like it helps you to go, okay, we're all right.
Yeah.
It was just one bad Sunday. It was just one bad quarter. Let's play for the long game.
Yeah. Well, I imagine in that story, John the Baptist, he's literally watching his followers leave and go to Jesus. And he's got to go back to what you talked about at the beginning. What was the original thing that I felt called to? Yeah. And it was to prepare the way for the Messiah. It wasn't to build this big thing. So I'm curious for you, as you've had to go through those moments of defining or redefining your scoreboard, how much of it is going back to the original thing that you felt God called you to?
I think there's two things to go back to. Number one, it's not yours. The church is not yours. These people are not yours. None of this is ours.
Yeah.
I mean, all that God is using Sidecar through, all that God is using your church through, it's really not yours. You've been handed it, and God has blessed you, and then you will give it to someone else, or it'll cease. And then we will go meet our Maker, and we'll go see Jesus.
Yeah.
And so that's a big overarching, and I'm 60 now, so I'm thinking about that. Because I think when you start getting in your 60s and 70s, you got to start thinking, okay, there's less in front of me than there was, and I'm now in the handoff transition phase, and what you don't want to do is hold on and make it all about you. I mean, there's nothing worse than that. You want to do that well, but I think it's the idea of, okay, this is not mine.
Yeah.
I'm a part of this. I'm not it. And then you go back to, okay, so what is my greatest use of my time? I love what Greg Serrato always says. You need to discover what you're the best in the world at. Because there's something. So what are you the best in the world? What is your church the best in the world at? What is your business? What is the way you handle people, the way you treat people, the way you care for people? There's something about the way you serve somebody, or there's something about the way you laugh, or the way you add value in a room that is different. There's a uniqueness. So, trying to do, what am I the best in the world at? What is the best version of me so that I can make my greatest contribution to the Great Commission.
Yeah.
I think those are thoughts that should be in play.
It's like whenever we're doing our offsites, we're trying to help people find their high contribution zone is what we say.
Yeah, it's better wording than
you're
me.
right.
You're such great words.
Oh, whatever. Hey, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about this for a minute. In leadership, there's seasons where you feel like, man, everyone loves me. You know, the whole church loves me. You know, all my staff love me. I'm everything I do is perfect.
Hearts.
And then those are easy days to lead in. They're pretty easy.
You touch it and it turns to gold.
Yeah, you touch it turns to gold. It's like, it's great. Everything's great. It's perfect up and to the right. And then there's these seasons where you're not so popular with maybe your team or your staff. You've had to make a hard decision, or there's just criticism, maybe from in this space. You know, you get attacked on someone's blog, you get attacked here and there. How do you, because I've watched you do it and you've done it really well. I have so many stories I could tell right now, but I've watched you go through.
Because I've made so many mistakes.
No, I've seen people do just crazy stuff. I'm watching, I'm like, oh man. I think one time we were sitting in the airport. There was somebody, can't say who it was, but they really did something wrong to you and to the church. And you just handled it with such honor and integrity. And you and I are sitting at the airport. I was young. I was traveling with you. I was probably 24, 25. And I asked you about it, and you reluctantly began to talk to me about it. And I said, man, I wish I could go and fight him right now. And you're like, well, that's just your youthfulness and immaturity. You're like, you'll learn as you get older. Yeah. But I've watched you handle situations like that, criticism, haters, all this stuff with integrity. And it's almost like, I know it's got to hit you because you're human. You're not bulletproof. It's got to hit you some. But you've kept your focus and you've stayed steadfast. Like the mission's not changing eventually. And I've watched it, but the question is, how have you kept your heart soft, compassionate, empathetic, and not become jaded, harsh, mean? Because there's some leaders that happens to them, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is unfortunate. Well, a good wife. Yeah. Thank God for a good wife, good kids, a good pastor. Pastor Chris has always helped me when I let it get the best of me. And I wanted to respond, or I wanted to defend. And you know yourself. I mean, I know that, you know, God's been merciful to me. Yeah. God has been very good to me, gracious, merciful. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had some good days and some bad days. So you're aware of your own sinfulness. Yeah. You're aware of your own deficit of what you need in Christ. And how the cross and the resurrection power is everything to be sustained. I know that sounds super spiritual, but it's the truth, man. Mm-hmm. It is the truth. But I heard Joyce Meyer say something probably 10 years ago that helped me, really helped me. She's so practical, and she's, you know, we call her Mama Joyce. But she said that I think she was 54 or 55, and she came to this realization that 10% of the people that know her don't like her, but 90% do. And she said, and that 10% changes every day. And she realized she'd been living for the 10% and not celebrating or receiving the 90%. Yeah. And that really hit me. I said, I need to be okay that there are people that don't agree, people that don't like, people that have assumed, or maybe they have true criticism of me, what we're building, what we're about. But 90% of the people that you know love you and are thankful for you and are kind. So you kind of have to eventually be okay with the percentages. Now, for some people, it's more. Yeah, I think there's some seasons where 10. It flips a little. You know, and what you're saying, Jason, 90% of the people don't like you, and there's a few that do. So whatever that percentage is, however that pendulum swings, you got to be okay that, you know, I'm trying my best. Yeah, I know I'm not perfect. I'm not going to become narcissistic about it, and everybody else is wrong, and everybody else is this. I'm going to try to stay sure, but I'm going to stay focused. Yeah. I can't let that now shift, that pendulum. Yeah. I can't let that now get in me, my emotions, my spirit, my call, my purpose. You got to go to bed at night and take a deep breath and say, okay, tomorrow's a new day. Yeah. Let's try to get after it again. So you keep showing up. And you keep serving, and you just got to keep doing it. I mean, we've all done that. You've done that. I've done that. We've all done that. Where you just get up and say, "Okay, let's go. Let's go hit it for 10 hours."
Yeah, that's great.
Is that that's just leadership, right? Is that it's par for the course? Yeah, that people are you're gonna take some shots. People are going to desert you. People are going to, it's part of it. And you have to have that
Exactly.
resilience. You have to have that steadfastness.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with that, you can't listen to the criticism of everybody or else that would drown you. But you have to know that there's got to be people that you can receive feedback from. So how do you figure out who are the people that I need to receive feedback from versus we always say feedback is our friend. Like we want feedback so we can get better.
I've heard Jason say that. It's been big for me.
So how do you know who are the people, what they're saying is criticism and I can't let that get in me. But what this other person is saying is feedback that I need to listen to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you better figure out your security before you even navigate that question. Because if you're insecure,
can't handle it.
All that's going to whack you out.
Yeah.
And but you know, it's funny to me. There are people, of course, that don't like everybody, and there are people. Everybody has critics. What's amazing is when you get criticism, and then it makes you better.
Yeah,
you're like. You thought that was going to bring me lower. You thought that was going to make me quit. No. I'm going to take your criticism and change or adjust or relook at something.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting better from it. Our organization, our process, my outlook. So I feel like you can still win.
Yeah.
So you approach it from a winning attitude that I'm going to win from this. And then, but you definitely have to have people that you've given permission to speak. You can't give everybody access, permission, but you do have to give some people permission to speak. There is a safe harbor that you need to let people in, allowed to in, to fix the boat. You can't fix it out in the open ocean with everything and everybody. You go into a safe harbor, you dock, and there are people that you want to allow to make you better. That you've. And I think it's people that you've done life with. That maybe there's been the good, the bad, and the ugly. They've been through the valleys. They've been on the mountaintop with you. They don't want anything from you. They don't really need anything from you. It doesn't mean they don't work with you.
Right.
I think they can still work with you and still be great instructors. But are you secure enough to receive it? And my wife is. I mean, my wife will adjust me, brother.
Thank God for our wives, huh?
I've only been married 7 months, and I know that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's easy, but I mean, let's be honest, it ain't easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy to do something that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know, when you say something, I'll never forget. Probably 8 years ago, I got upset over something. Man, I was fired up, and I just sent out a little message. Just to kind of
when you say message, like a tweet or Instagram?
It was just a little message.
Okay,
it's a little message, and it was so low level. What do you call it when you're trying to say something?
Subtweet.
It was like a sub message.
Yeah,
where you're not saying it, but you're saying it.
Yeah, read between the lines.
It was a read between the lines of a defense of a position, and my good pastor, Mr. Hodges, texted me and said, "Did you really mean to send that message to this
PC?"
And he was very kind. He said, I don't think that's who you are.
You know what I love about that
language?
He didn't say that's not what we do. He brought it to that's just not who we are.
Yeah,
that's not who you are.
He said that's not who you are. He said, and I don't think that's your heart. And immediately convicted. Yeah, convicted, embarrassed. How did I let that get to me? How did I get to that point of no trust in God, doubt, negative? And boy, I deleted that thing in a moment in that message thread deal. And and so what did it do? It checked me. And that sting hurt a little while.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna do it again.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have.
Yeah.
I may have, but I don't think I have. But thank God for a friend who you've given permission. And like you said, Jay, the approach. Yeah. His message was more, hey, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You bucket head, about to fire you up in here. It was, are you sure? Is that who you are?
You knew he wanted the best for you in that moment.
1,000%.
That's a key. You got to have those folks in your life that they love you. They want what's best for you. Yeah. There's no other agenda.
Yeah.
It's like they
and you don't age out of it. I think that's important to say.
That's great.
You do not age out of it. You do not you don't become more successful out of it. That's the big problem. It's an age or a success. And then all of a sudden, you've now become so accomplished out of accountability.
Dangerous
That's
place
great.
to be.
Accomplish out of correction. And that's not true at all. That's never true.
That's great.
My mom used to, I kind of stole this from her when I was young.
I love your mom.
I came home from work when I was working at Healing Place with you, and someone corrected me and just said something, and it just stung, and I reacted. I'm of the assumption that
I know how them layers react.
you either when you're corrected, you're either a turtle or a porcupine. I'm the porcupine. You retreat or you attack.
Layers of porcupines, boy.
So I did not respond right. I just came, and I came home, and I'm kind of venting to my mom, and she said, "Son," she goes, "that's very immature."
Ooh.
I was like, "All right, double correction in one day. Awesome." And she said, "Do you know the wise thing to do?" She said, "Anytime somebody gives you feedback or criticism, it doesn't matter who they are." She said, "Your responsibility is to truth. So you got to get along with the Lord and say, Lord, is there any truth in what this person's saying?" And she said, "If it's only 10% true, then you're responsible for the 10%. And I was like, oh man.
She turned the furnace up on you.
She did.
She burnt me. She cooked me.
turned
She
the
was
furnace
cooking
up.
that day.
We call her Mama Red for a reason.
But it was great. I actually still practice that today. If someone gives me feedback, whoever that may be, I just say, okay, thank you so much for that.
I have a Mama Red story.
Come on, give it to us.
So, and I think it's important. It makes sense. She stopped me one Sunday. We were in the middle of a good season. And she had told me how she had been with just the poor. I mean, she had been on a mission trip, and it was with some real, it was with suffering humanity. And I remember standing there, and she just was sharing about the passion for it. And I think I was in a season where there was just a lot of church things happening, a lot of things moving. And I'll never forget sitting there with her. I could go to the part of the carpet in the front building where she just poured out, and it was like the Lord used it to get me back.
Yeah, that's great.
And I remember she brought some people in from out of town, and it's like I made it a point to meet them. And to give a moment, of course. And I think we bought them lunch or something. We did something. I forgot where she had been. I want to say somewhere in the Caribbean or somewhere in South America.
She's always everywhere.
But I just remember her standing in front of me talking about that. And it was like I got convicted.
Yeah.
And was like, man, I need to make sure, I'm still dialed into that. Because you could get a season where, you're just playing at a different field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, it's like when you go to these baseball fields, there's 800 fields. It's like, okay, I need to get you back to the field that you're best at.
Yeah.
So
one of those pit stop moments.
It's like,
that's great.
What's the phrase at CZ?
Stay close to the work.
Stay close to the work.
Yeah.
That's what they say about it.
Yeah. Stay close to the work. One of the things I want to talk about with you, Pastor Dino, and looking at you and your life and your leadership and your longevity in leadership, I love and admire that you have people that you've been doing this with for a long time. That there's been people that in Louisiana, here, different seasons, that you've just got longevity with not only your leadership, but with the people that you've been doing leadership with as well. I think it's something admirable. It's something I always aspire to and want, because I think relationships are the most important thing. So I'd just be curious, I'm sure that throughout those seasons, there's been tough seasons of relationship as well. But just curious what you would say to what's been your keys to success or things that you've done to not just have longevity in your leadership, but to have longevity in your relationships as well.
Well, a lot of it would be on the other side. I've had good friends that have been good friends to me, so I've received good friendship.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be intentional. I talked to Johnny Green this morning.
Oh, bro.
And
Johnny.
because there was something I thought about, and I needed a question from him. And Johnny and I did life together for a long time, of course, at Healing Place with Pastor Mike. And I've just, and we had a good visit. And it was just, man, I love that dude. I just love Johnny Green. And so, looking back on your life, burning bridges is not wise.
Yeah.
You will eventually burn every bridge and you will be on an island.
Yeah.
That's how it works. And I have watched that.
Yeah.
So you're just trying not to do that to the best you can. But, you have to be intentional. It's the whole, you can't withdraw what you've not deposited. Everybody goes to the bank trying to get more out than you put in.
Right. Yeah.
So, there's going to be a time in your life where you if you're wise, you're going to need some friends. So, but, have you been intentional? Have you reciprocated a friendship?
Yeah.
I work hard at that. I don't know what measure of success I'll have, or have had, but I do work hard at friendships. So I have reminders in my phone. Mark Cleary, who's a dear friend of all of us, he and I both cherish friendship, and so we both are kind of allies in making sure we're doing our best to value people and value them in their moments that are important to them. I think being there for people when things are important, whether to open up at a building or they're going into surgery or they're having a significant birthday or anniversary or something's happened in their life that's tough.
Yeah.
My father-in-law, Wayne Austin, always told me, don't miss the things that only happen once or twice.
That's a great statement.
So you need to be there for people that things only happen once or twice in their life.
Yeah.
You only turn 60 once. You may have surgery to remove a cancer once.
Yeah.
So you're trying to pay attention. Now we miss them, and that's heartbreaking. We do miss them, but I have been very fortunate to have. I just saw Dan Olerking, 40-year friend. I was on the phone with John Siebling 2 days ago, 35-year friend.
Yeah.
Chris Hodges, 30-year friend.
Yeah.
Randy Bezet texted me this morning, known that dude a long time.
Yeah.
I saw Gayla Foster.
Yeah.
I mean, we've known her, Delin and I, since she was 12, 13. I've known Jason's family.
Yeah.
It's just, so you got to work on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have a plan. Christmases are important. Thanksgiving, all those things are important. So I try to take time during those moments. And again, just an attention of, I'm going to be a friendly person. I've got the idea. You got to do, you actually got to send the text.
Practical things. Well, I can say this just from observation. I mean, after watching your leadership for so many years, I remember one of the first things you taught me when I started traveling, speaking at churches, you're like, oh, you don't just show up empty-handed. You show up with a gift. You're going to show up with a gift.
Something, a card, anything.
Card, something. Come on, be a blessing. And so, but I've watched you do, like, if you can't be there, you're sending a text. Even now, you will text me on those launch weekends. You're like, hey, here's a list of guys. I want to make sure we're texting them, tell them we're praying for them. We're loving on these guys. Come on. And you're texting people. You still write the cards, baby.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a power of a handwritten card.
True.
You send cards, you show up. If you can't be there, you send someone there. The phrase is everyone ends up somewhere. A few people end up somewhere on purpose. Yeah. And you've done that intentionally. And it's just, I think we can't underestimate what the little things like that do over a long period of time, that compounding interest.
Yeah.
Maybe just one final question for you. We're just thinking there's probably some people that are listening to this that they want to give up right now. There's probably some pastors, maybe it's a spouse, it could be whatever, church planner. And they're just like, I don't know, man. I'm discouraged. And, you think about that scripture, Galatians 6:9, don't get weary. Don't get weary. Don't get weary. If you'll hang on, if you'll keep going, you're going to reap a great harvest. But you got to wait. You got to sustain. You got to be steadfast. What would you say in kind of your final remarks to the person, specifically that person that feels like, Pastor Dino, I want to give up?
Yeah. Well, they're not alone.
Yeah.
Everybody at this table, probably everybody in the studio has wanted to give up. Mm-hmm. So you're not alone. You're not rare. You're not broken. You're not. There's not a default. There's not a. There's not something that's. There's not a factory mess up in your life because you're wanting to give up. So we want to give up. There's things we go through where we want to give up. And I know it sounds crazy, but I go back to what my father-in-law has taught me, Wayne Austin. Now it's not forever.
Yeah,
it's great.
Jason, I don't know how many times that statement, it is tough, but now it's not forever. It will change.
Yeah.
It will change. So don't give up. It will change. And 90% of the things that have worried me, created anxiety, created a panic. We've all had panic moments. Some people suffer with that differently, but I've had panic moments where it's like, this is it. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 90% of the things that created that panic, those thoughts, they didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10% did. 10% did.
Wow.
But 90% didn't. And the 10% that did, friends, your people around you, God Almighty, your faith, the Bible, worship, prayer, get you through the 10% that does happen. Yeah. And but you hold on and you ride. Me and my dad, when I was about 9 years old, he decided to ride out a hurricane. And we were in a trailer, and we went next door in a little tiny little villa. And that house shook all night long. And I remember midway through, my dad was like, I think we made a mistake. And it shook all night long, but we made it through it. And, there's a lot of things that will shake and you'll think, okay, I think we made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's over. And even if it's over, I mean, what's on the other side of it being over in God?
Yeah.
I think the devil tries to bring terror, lies, images, but being over even in God is still okay.
Yeah.
And I think at my age, I've tried to resign to that.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that phrase. My prayer is that could get in all of our souls. Now is not forever.
Yeah.
Whatever season you're walking through, now is not forever. I know that I wouldn't be the leader that I am without your influence, and Sidecar wouldn't exist. Our church wouldn't exist without you, Mama D, and really just everything that you've modeled over the years. And so I love you so much. Thankful for
proud
that.
of you as a husband, dad, pastor, leader, both of you. And I'm going to see Mama D here in a minute. She's about to roll in. Let's go.
Come on. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Pastor Dino.
Thank y'all.